The War of the Five Kings had already devoured honor, loyalty, and truth in equal measure. Kings rose and fell on lies whispered in torchlit halls, and men died for banners that meant less with each passing day. But even in a realm built on deception, there were truths so dangerous they could shatter the seven kingdoms entirely. And one such truth was about to find the last man anyone would trust with it. Rain lashed against the rough timber walls of the Stark encampment, turning the earth beneath into thick, sucking mud. The air smelled of wet leather, horse sweat, and iron, always iron. War had a scent. Jaime Lannister had learned long ago. It never quite left you. He sat bound at the wrists, though not cruelly, inside a guarded tent. The Kingslayer, the Oathbreaker, the man who had slain a king to save a city that would never thank him for it. Outside, wolves howled in the distance. Jaime leaned his head back against the wooden post behind him, golden hair matted from days of travel as a prisoner. His green eyes flicked toward the tent flap as shadows moved beyond it. Stark men changing watch, their voices low and humorless. They hated him. That much was expected. What he did not expect was the dream. It came without warning. One moment, there was only the rhythmic drumming of rain. The next, silence. Not natural silence. Not the quiet of a forest or the stillness before dawn. This was something deeper. Older. Jaime stood. No ropes bound him now. The tent was gone. He found himself beneath pale trees, bone-white bark and leaves the color of fresh blood. The ground was soft with fallen crimson petals, and the air carried a strange, metallic sweetness. Godswood, but not one he recognized. A single tree loomed before him, its carved face weeping red sap like tears. The eyes, they were watching him. "I don't pray," Jaime muttered, hand instinctively reaching for a sword that was no longer at his hip. "You've the wrong man." The wind did not answer, but the tree did. The world shifted. Not gently, violently. Jaime staggered as the red leaves turned to dust, swirling into a storm of memory that was not his own. A tower. Stone, pale and defiant against a burning sky. The Tower of Joy. Jaime froze. He had never been there. Not truly. But every knight of the Kingsguard knew the whispers. Knew where Prince Rhaegar had hidden Lyanna Stark during the rebellion. Knew where Eddard Stark had gone, and what he had returned with. Or rather, who? The vision sharpened. Steel rang against steel. He saw men in white cloaks, his brothers of the Kingsguard, fighting not for a king, but for a promise. Ser Arthur Dayne moved like living legend. Dawn flashing in arcs too fast for mortal eyes to follow. Blood sprayed across the stones. Then came the end. Falling bodies. Silence. And then, inside the tower, Jaime's breath caught. He wasn't there as a man now. He was something else. A witness. A ghost. Lyanna Stark lay on a bed soaked in blood, her face pale as winter snow. Dark hair clung to her cheeks, damp with sweat. Her eyes, those fierce Stark eyes, were dimming. Eddard Stark knelt beside her, grief etched into every line of his face. "Promise me," she whispered. The words echoed, unnatural, as if spoken through water and time itself. Jaime leaned closer, though he knew she could not see him. "Promise me, Ned." A child cried. Soft, fragile, alive. Jaime's heart stuttered. No, that wasn't right. He had heard the story all his life. Everyone had. Rhaegar had abducted Lyanna. She had died. Ned Stark had returned with a bastard, a shame he carried to his grave. But this was different. This was not shame. This was, "Promise me," Lyanna said again, her voice breaking. "Protect him. They'll kill him. If they know." Ned's hand trembled as he took hers. "I swear it." The child cried louder. Jaime stepped forward, as if drawn by some invisible force. The baby was wrapped in cloth, dark hair, pale skin. But there was something else. Something beneath the surface. Something that did not belong to the north. The vision twisted again. For a heartbeat, just one, Jaime saw the child's eyes open. Not gray, not Stark. A flicker of violet. Valyrian. The world shattered. Jaime gasped as he was thrown back into darkness, the sound of the child's cry echoing into nothing. Then, he woke. The tent rushed back into existence around him. The rain, the mud, the distant howl of wolves. Jaime sucked in a sharp breath, chest heaving as though he had run a mile in full armor. His wrists burned against the rope where he had struggled in his sleep. "Gods," he whispered hoarsely. But the old gods did not answer. Because this was not their doing alone. Jaime's mind raced. The Tower of Joy. Lyanna Stark. A child. Not a bastard. Not Ned's shame. Ned's promise. No. Jaime shook his head, as if the motion alone could cast the vision aside. Dreams are wind. Meaningless. But he knew better. He had seen enough death, enough truth hidden beneath lies, to recognize something real when it clawed its way into his mind. And this felt real. Too real. Jon Snow. The name came unbidden. Ned Stark's bastard. The boy at the wall. Jaime had seen him only once, briefly, years ago at Winterfell. A quiet thing, watching the world with eyes too old for his age. Gray eyes. But what if? Jaime's breath slowed. What if that had been a lie? What if everything about the boy had been a lie? He leaned forward, chains rattling softly. If the child in that tower was Rhaegar's son, then the line of succession did not die on the trident. It lived. It grew. It wore black at the edge of the world. And if that were true, Jaime let out a low, humorless laugh. Then the war they were fighting was meaningless. Joffrey Baratheon was no king. Stannis' claim, built on bloodline, would crumble beneath a truer heir. Renly's ambition would look like child's play. Robb Stark's rebellion, built on a lie his own father had carried to the grave. And across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen, last of her line. Not the last. Never the last. Jaime closed his eyes. 7 hells. For the first time since his capture, since the war began. Since he had slain Aerys to save a city that would never forgive him. Jaime Lannister felt something he had not felt in years. Not fear. Not pride. Something colder. Uncertainty. Because this was not a sword he could swing. Not an enemy he could kill. This was truth. And in Westeros, truth was the deadliest weapon of all. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside the tent, the Kingslayer opened his eyes and began to wonder what kind of man he would become if he chose to use it. If you want to see more characters arrive in Westeros, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Winter is coming, and so are more stories. The rain did not stop, but somewhere beyond the storm, the game had changed, and Jaime Lannister was no longer just a prisoner of war. He was the only man alive who knew the truth that could burn the 7 kingdoms to ash. Sleep did not return to Jaime Lannister that night. He sat awake long after the storm had dulled to a whisper against the canvas, staring into the dark as if the vision might return and correct itself, tell him it had all been madness, a trick of exhaustion, or the cruel humor of the gods. But it did not. Instead, memory came. Not the false memory the realm had accepted, but the fragments he had buried. Robert's rebellion. Fire. Madness. Aerys Targaryen screaming for wildfire. Jaime clenched his jaw. He had been there at the end. He had seen the fall of a dynasty. Not as a story told by singers, but as it truly was, bloody, chaotic, and full of men making choices they would carry to their graves. And one man above. All others had walked away from that war, with a secret heavy enough to bend his honor. Eddard Stark. Jaime exhaled slowly, his gaze drifting to the faint light bleeding through the seams of the tent. Dawn approached, gray and cold. Ned Stark. He muttered. The man had judged him, condemned him with those quiet, unwavering eyes the day Jaime sat on the Iron Throne. Sword across his knees, the mad king dead at his feet. Kingslayer. Oathbreaker. Dishonor made flesh. Jaime had worn the name like armor ever since. But now he wondered. What kind of man keeps a secret like that? What kind of honor demands a lie so vast it reshapes the realm? Jaime shifted, the ropes around his wrists tightening as he moved. He barely noticed. He remembered the way Ned had looked at him, not just with disgust, but something deeper, something almost like understanding buried beneath judgment. At the time, Jaime had dismissed it. Now it gnawed at him. Because if the vision was true, if Lyanna Stark had borne Rhaegar's child, then Ned Stark had done something far more dangerous than killing a king. He had hidden one, a king who still lived, a king who had taken the black. Jaime laughed softly, shaking his head. The gods do have a sense of humor. A true-born Targaryen heir, sworn to the Night's Watch, bound to celibacy, stripped of titles, forbidden from claiming lands or crowns. The realm had not just buried its rightful king. It had exiled him to the edge of the world. Footsteps approached outside the tent, pulling Jaime from his thoughts. The flap opened, letting in a slice of pale morning light and the scent of wet earth. A Stark guard entered, thick-bearded and hard-eyed. "On your feet, Kingslayer." Jaime raised an eyebrow. "You'll have to untie me first, unless you plan on dragging me like a sack of grain." The guard grunted, stepping forward to cut the rope at Jaime's wrists. His hands were raw where the bindings had rubbed, but he flexed them slowly, masking the discomfort. "Lord Stark wants the prisoners moved," the man said. "We ride at first light." Jaime smirked faintly. "Which one?" There seemed to be several Starks these days, all playing at kings. The guard's expression darkened. "Watch your tone." Jaime leaned closer, voice dropping. "Or what? You'll kill me? I assure you. That would make your young king very unhappy." The man said nothing, but his grip tightened on his weapon. "Good," Jaime thought. "Let them hate me. It keeps things simple." But nothing was simple anymore. As he was led from the tent, the cold morning air struck his face. The camp stretched out before him, rows of tents. Banners bearing the direwolf of House Stark snapping in the wind. Soldiers moved with purpose, preparing for the day's march. War did not wait for secrets. Jaime's eyes scanned the camp instinctively, assessing positions, counting men, noting weaknesses. Even as a prisoner, he was a commander. That part of him would never fade. But today, his thoughts drifted elsewhere. North. The Wall. Jon Snow. He had dismissed the boy once, as he dismissed most things that did not concern him. A bastard, nothing more. Another Stark shadow. But now that shadow loomed larger than any king in the field. Jaime's lips thinned. If the truth came out, it would not simply end the war. It would replace it. A war of succession would become a war of legitimacy. Every lord in Westeros would be forced to choose. Joffrey, the Golden Boy, sitting the Iron Throne through fear and Lannister power. Stannis, the rigid claimant, clinging to law and blood. Renly, the charismatic usurper, backed by the Reach. Robb Stark, the young wolf, crowned by the North. And then, Jon Snow, the hidden dragon, a name no one would see coming. Jaime let out a quiet breath. "And what would you choose, boy?" he murmured under his breath. Would Jon even want it? A life at the Wall stripped men of ambition. It made them ghosts long before death came. But blood was blood, and Targaryen blood. That was something else entirely. A shout rose from across the camp, drawing Jaime's attention. A group of riders approached, scouts returning, their horses lathered and restless. One dismounted quickly, speaking in hushed urgency to a Stark officer. Jaime couldn't hear the words, but he saw the reaction. Tension. Concern. The war was shifting again. Always shifting. He almost smiled. Because now, for the first time, Jaime Lannister had something no army, no king, no council possessed. Knowledge. And unlike swords or gold, it could not be taken from him, only used. The question was, how? A familiar voice cut through the noise. "You're staring too hard. Sir Jaime. One might think you're planning something." Jaime turned. Brienne of Tarth stood a short distance away, armored and imposing. Her blue eyes fixed on him with that same unwavering intensity he had come to recognize. His smile returned, sharper now. "Planning? Me? I'm a captive, my lady. My plans extend only to not dying before supper." She did not smile. "They say you were speaking in your sleep." Jaime's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted. "Do they?" he said lightly. "You said a name," Brienne continued. "More than once." Jaime tilted his head. "And what name would that be?" She studied him for a long moment. "Lyanna." The world seemed to still, just for a heartbeat. Then Jaime laughed, a smooth, effortless sound that masked the storm beneath. "Ah, a tragic beauty from a tragic war. Even prisoners are allowed their dreams, are they not?" Brienne did not look convinced. "Dreams do not make men afraid." Jaime met her gaze. "And what makes you think I'm afraid?" "Because," she said quietly, "you're thinking." That, more than anything, caught him off guard. Jaime held her gaze for a moment longer, then looked away. For once, he had no easy answer. Because Brienne was right. He was thinking, and that was far more dangerous than fear. The guards urged them forward, and the camp began to stir into motion around them. Horses whinnied, armor clinked, banners lifted as the Stark host prepared to move. War marched on, but Jaime Lannister walked through it differently now. Not as a knight, not as a prisoner, but as a man holding a truth that could unravel kings. And somewhere far to the north, beyond castles and crowns and endless fields of war, A young man in black stood upon a wall of ice, unaware that his very existence threatened to bring the realm to its knees. Jaime flexed his freed hands slowly. The game had changed, and for the first time in his life, he was not sure which side he wanted to win. The march northward was slow, grinding, and relentless. Mud clung to boots and hooves alike, sucking at every step as the Stark host pushed through the riverlands. The banners of the dire wolf rippled against a sky that refused to clear, heavy with clouds that threatened more rain. War had turned the land sour, fields trampled, villages abandoned, the smell of smoke never far from the wind. Jaime Lannister walked among them, unchained now but never unguarded. Two Stark soldiers flanked him at all times, their hands never straying far from their weapons. They watched him the way men watched a coiled serpent, waiting for the moment it might strike. Let them watch, Jaime thought. They had no idea what he carried. He moved with an easy confidence, masking the storm within. Every step brought him closer to decisions he had never imagined facing. Not battles, not duels, choices, the kind that reshaped kingdoms. Ahead, the column slowed. Orders were shouted. Riders moved back and forth with urgency. Jaime glanced up. At the center of the host rode Robb Stark, the young wolf. He wore a crown now, though not of gold, bronze and iron, circled with ancient runes of the first men. It suited him. There was something in the boy's posture, something in the way men rallied around him, that spoke of more than simple rebellion. He was becoming a king, and Jaime wondered, what happens to a king when the truth beneath his crown is a lie? Keep moving. One of the guards snapped, shoving lightly at Jaime's shoulder. Jaime obliged, though his eyes lingered on Robb a moment longer. Robb Stark had crowned himself king in the north in defiance of the Iron Throne. His cause was built on vengeance, on honor, on the belief that his father had been wronged. All true, but incomplete, because Ned Stark had lied, not out of weakness, but out of necessity. Jaime exhaled slowly. Seven hells, Stark, he murmured under his breath. What did you do to yourself? The column came to a halt entirely now. Word began to spread through the ranks. Scouts had returned with news. Lannister movements. Possible engagement ahead. War again. Always war. Jaime almost welcomed it. Battle was simple. Steel met steel. Men lived or died. There was clarity in it. This was something else entirely. Sir Jaime. The voice came from behind him. Jaime turned. Brienne of Tarth approached. Her armor dulled by travel, but her presence as imposing as ever. She dismissed the guards with a glance, though they did not go far. You've been watching him, she said, nodding toward Robb Stark. Jaime smirked faintly, a prisoner observing his captor. Hardly unusual. Brienne's eyes narrowed. You're measuring him. Jaime tilted his head. A habit of mine. I measure everyone. And what do you see? Jaime looked back toward the young king. I see a boy playing at war, he said lightly. And winning. Brienne did not smile. He's more than that. Oh, I know, Jaime said quietly. That's what makes it interesting. Brienne studied him, as if trying to peel back the layers of his words. You're different, she said after a moment. Jaime raised an eyebrow. Careful, Brienne. People might think you're starting to like me. This isn't a jest. No, Jaime agreed softly. It isn't. For a moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the camp filled the space between them. Horses shifting, men shouting, the distant clang of armor being checked and rechecked. Finally, Brienne said, What happened? Jaime met her gaze, and for the first time since the vision, he considered telling someone. Not a king, not a schemer, not a man who would use the truth as a weapon, but her, Brienne of Tarth, a woman who believed in honor as if it were still alive in this broken world. Jaime let out a slow breath. Tell me something, he said instead. If you knew a truth, one that could end this war, but start another, would you speak it? Brienne frowned. What kind of truth? The kind that makes kings into pretenders, Jaime said. The kind that turns allies into enemies. Her expression hardened. Truth is truth. It doesn't change because it's dangerous. Jaime smiled faintly, spoken like someone who's never seen what truth does to men in power. Brienne stepped closer. You're avoiding the question, and you're answering it without understanding it, Jaime countered. Her jaw tightened. Try me. Jaime held her gaze. He thought of the tower, of Lyanna's voice, of the child, of Jon Snow standing on a wall of ice, unaware that his blood could ignite the world. And then he looked back at Brienne. Let's say, Jaime said slowly. That everything this war is built on is wrong. Brienne's brow furrowed. That the rightful king sits nowhere near a throne. Jaime continued. That he wears no crown, commands no army, and doesn't even know what he is. Silence fell between them. Brienne searched his face. You're not speaking in riddles, she said quietly. You're speaking from knowledge. Jaime did not answer. That was answer enough. Brienne exhaled slowly. If what you're saying is true, then yes, it should be revealed. Jaime's smile returned, but there was no humor in it. Even if it destroys everything, better a painful truth than a comforting lie. Jaime looked away. That's a very noble answer. It's the right one. Jaime laughed softly. There it is again. That word. Right. He turned back to her. Let me tell you something, Brienne of Tarth. I once did the right thing. I killed a king to save a city. His voice dropped, quieter now. And for that, I became the most hated man in Westeros. Brienne did not flinch. Because no one knew the truth. Exactly, Jaime said. The word hung between them. Truth. A blade sharper than any Valyrian steel. Brienne's eyes widened slightly as understanding began to form. You're saying? I'm saying nothing. Jaime cut in smoothly. Not yet. She stepped closer. You have to tell someone. Do I? Jaime asked. And who would that be? Your young king. He gestured toward Robb. Tell him his father's honor was built on a lie. That his crown might belong to someone else. Brienne hesitated. Jaime pressed on. Or perhaps Stannis Baratheon. He does love his laws. I'm sure he'd appreciate learning he's not as legitimate as he thinks. His tone darkened. Or my sister. Imagine Cersei's face when she learns. Her son is not just a bastard, but a usurper of a throne that belongs to a boy in black. Brienne's expression shifted. Now she understood. Not just the truth, but the weight of it. This would tear the realm apart, she said. Jaime nodded slowly. Yes. A horn sounded in the distance, sharp and urgent. Orders rang out. The army was moving again. But neither of them moved. Then why tell me? Brienne asked. Jaime met her eyes. Because, he said quietly, for the first time in my life, I don't know what the right thing is. Brienne held his gaze. And in that moment, the Kingslayer, the man she had sworn to hate, looked less like a villain and more like a man standing at the edge of something far greater than himself. Then you'd better decide, she said. Because if you don't, someone else will. Jaime nodded once. He knew she was right. Truth did not stay buried forever. And when it rose, it did not ask permission. As the Stark host began to move once more, Jaime Lannister walked with them. No longer just a captive, no longer just a knight, but a man holding a secret that could crown a king or burn the world. They made camp beneath a stand of bare-limbed trees as dusk bled across the sky. The riverlands stretched around them like a wound that refused to close, blackened. Farmsteads in the distance. Crows circling lazily overhead. The faint smell of rot carried on the evening wind. Fires were lit in careful circles. Soldiers gathering in clusters to eat, sharpen blades, and speak in low, wary tones. War had made everyone quieter. Jaime Lannister sat near the edge of the encampment, his hands free but watched all the same. A tin cup rested loosely in his fingers, the watered wine within barely touched. His gaze lingered on the flames ahead, watching them flicker and twist as if they might reveal something more than simple heat. Fire. Strange how often it returned to him now. Wildfire in King's Landing. The Mad King's final command. Burn them all. Jaime's jaw tightened. He had stopped that fire once. Killed a king to do it. And now, he held something that could ignite a different kind of destruction. Not flames. Truth. Brooding doesn't suit you. The voice came from behind him. Jaime didn't turn. And yet here I am, doing it so well. Brienne of Tarth stepped into view, her armor catching the firelight in dull glints. She lowered herself across from him with less grace than she would have preferred, but more purpose than most knights Jaime had known. You've been quiet, she said. Jaime smirked faintly. You wound me. I thought you enjoyed my conversation. I enjoy honesty. Jaime glanced up at her. Then you must be very disappointed in this world. Brienne did not take the bait this time. Tell me, she said instead. Everything. Jaime's fingers tightened slightly around the cup. For a long moment, he said nothing. The fire crackled between them. Somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. Steel rang softly as a blade was sharpened. Finally, Jaime exhaled. You won't like it, he said. That's not your concern. No. Jaime agreed quietly. It isn't. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. Do you know what I remember most about the end of the rebellion? He asked. Brienne frowned slightly. The Mad King. Everyone remembers the Mad King, Jaime said. His madness, his fire, his end. His eyes darkened. But I remember what came after. Brienne said nothing. Jaime continued. I remember Ned Stark walking into the throne room. The look on his face when he saw me sitting there, as if I were the villain of a story he hadn't finished hearing. He let out a quiet breath. I remember thinking, he doesn't understand. Brienne's voice softened. And now, Jaime met her gaze. Now I think he understood more than anyone else in that room. The words hung heavy in the air. Brienne leaned forward slightly. What do you mean? Jaime hesitated. Then, slowly, he spoke. I saw something, he said. Last night. A dream. Or something more than that. Brienne's eyes sharpened. Go on. A tower, Jaime said. In Dorne. The Tower of Joy. Recognition flickered across her face. That's where. Yes, Jaime cut in. Where Lyanna Stark died. He swallowed, the memory still vivid. Still wrong in ways he could not fully explain. She wasn't alone, he continued. Ned Stark was there. And a child. Brienne's breath caught. A child, she repeated. Jaime nodded. Not a bastard taken in shame, he said. A child hidden. Protected. His voice lowered. Promised. Brienne stared at him. You're saying? Jaime held her gaze. I'm saying Jon Snow is not who the world believes him to be. Silence. The fire crackled louder now, as if reacting to the weight of the words. Brienne's mind worked visibly, piecing it together. Rhaegar, she said slowly. Lyanna, you think. I don't think, Jaime said. I saw it. Brienne shook her head, as if trying to steady herself. That would mean that the trueborn son of Rhaegar Targaryen lives, Jaime finished, and has lived all this time under the name of Jon Snow. The wind stirred, sending sparks dancing into the night. Brienne's voice was barely above a whisper. That would make him the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, Jaime said. The words settled like a blade between them. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Brienne said, You're certain? Jaime's expression hardened. As certain as I was when I killed Aerys, he said. And I've lived with that certainty every day since. Brienne looked down at the fire. This changes everything. Jaime laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. Yes, he said. That's the problem. Brienne lifted her gaze again. We have to tell Robb. Jaime shook his head immediately. No. Her eyes narrowed. No. Not yet, Jaime said. Not like this. He deserves to know, Brienne insisted. And what happens when he does? Jaime countered. He's crowned king in the north. His bannermen have bled for him. You think they'll all kneel to a brother of the knights? Watch because of a secret no one can prove. Brienne hesitated. Jaime pressed on. And what of Jon Snow himself? He continued. You think he'll abandon his vows? That he'll march south and claim a throne he's never wanted? He deserves the truth, Brienne said firmly. Jaime nodded slowly. Yes, he said. He does. His voice softened. But truth is not a gift in this world, Brienne. It's a weapon. She met his gaze. Then use it wisely. Jaime smiled faintly. That's what I'm trying to decide. Brienne studied him carefully. You're afraid, she said. Jaime's smile faded. Not for myself, he admitted. For him. The admission hung in the air, unexpected and raw. Brienne blinked. Jon Snow? She asked. Jaime nodded once. The moment this truth comes out, he said, he becomes the most dangerous man in Westeros. He leaned closer. Not because of what he'll do, but because of what others will do to him. Brienne's expression shifted. Now she saw it clearly. The assassins. The schemers. The kings who would see Jon as a threat to be removed. Varys, she said quietly. Jaime's lips curled slightly. The spider would already be weaving his webs. And your sister, Jaime's expression hardened, would have him killed before the day was out. Silence fell again. The fire burned lower now, its light dimming as night deepened around them. So what do we do? Brienne asked. Jaime leaned back slightly, his gaze drifting to the dark horizon. For now, he said. We wait. Brienne frowned. Wait for what? Jaime's eyes returned to hers. For the right moment. And if that moment never comes? Jaime's expression turned cold. Then we make it. The wind howled softly through the trees, carrying with it the distant echoes of war. But here, at the edge of the camp, something else had begun. Not battle, not bloodshed, A choice. One that would decide the fate of kings. Jaime Lannister stared into the dying fire. And for the second time in his life, he found himself holding the fate of the realm in his hands. The first time, he had chosen to save it. This time, he wasn't sure what saving it even meant. The river mist came thick at dawn, curling low across the ground like a living thing. It swallowed the edges of the Stark encampment, blurring banners and men into shifting silhouettes. Sound carried strangely in it, hoofbeats muffled, voices distant, as though the world itself held its breath. Jaime Lannister stood at the perimeter, watching it. Mist. Another kind of veil. Another thing that hid truths until it chose to reveal them. You're becoming fond of staring into nothing. Jaime didn't need to turn to recognize the voice. On the contrary, he said lightly, I'm seeing more than I ever have. Brienne stepped beside him, her presence as solid as the ground beneath their feet. You didn't sleep. Neither did you. I don't carry secrets that can start wars. Jaime smirked faintly. No, you just carry a sword that ends them. Brienne didn't respond. Her attention shifted instead to something moving through the mist. Jaime followed her gaze. A rider. No, several. They emerged slowly, shapes resolving into men clad not in stark gray, but something darker, richer, cloaked in deep blues and blacks. Their armor fine but unadorned. Not soldiers, messengers, or something worse. The Stark guards reacted immediately, weapons drawn, forming a loose perimeter as the riders approached. One dismounted with deliberate calm, hands visible, posture relaxed in a way that suggested absolute confidence. Jaime's lips curled slightly. Well, he murmured. That didn't take long. Brienne glanced at him. You know them? I know the type. The man stepped forward, bowing just enough to be polite, but not enough to show submission. Sir Jaime Lannister, he said smoothly. Jaime raised an eyebrow. I'm touched. My reputation precedes me even in captivity. The man's lips twitched faintly. Some reputations are difficult to ignore. Brienne stepped forward, placing herself slightly between them. State your business. The man inclined his head toward her. Of course, though I believe this conversation concerns the Kingslayer more directly. Jaime chuckled softly. That name again. It never gets old. The man's eyes flicked back to Jaime. Some names shouldn't, he said. There was something in his tone, something measured, deliberate, that made the air feel tighter. Jaime studied him more closely now. Not a soldier, not a lord, something subtler. Bravos, Jaime guessed. The man smiled faintly. Close. Jaime's expression sharpened. Ah, he said softly. The spider sends his regards, does he? The man did not deny it. Brienne's hand tightened on her sword. Speak plainly. The man turned slightly, addressing both of them now. My master has learned that Sir Jaime Lannister has acquired knowledge of a most delicate nature. Jaime laughed outright this time. Your master learns things very quickly. Yes, the man said simply. He does. The mist seemed to press closer around them. Brienne's voice dropped. What knowledge? The man's gaze returned to Jaime. That depends, he said, on whether Sir Jaime wishes to share it. Jaime met his eyes, unflinching. And if I don't? The man smiled again. But this time, there was no warmth in it. Then others may be forced to act, without the benefit of your insight. A threat. Soft. Polite. Deadly. Brienne stepped forward. You're speaking in riddles. No, the man said calmly. I'm speaking in warnings. Jaime raised a hand slightly, stopping her. It's all right, he said. I understand him perfectly. He stepped closer to the messenger, lowering his voice just enough to keep it between them. Varys knows, Jaime said. The man's expression did not change, but that was answer enough. Jaime exhaled slowly. Of course he does, he murmured. The man probably knew before I did. The messenger inclined his head. My master knows many things. Jaime's gaze hardened. Then he knows what happens if this truth spreads. He does, the man replied, which is why he wishes to guide it. Jaime let out a low chuckle. Guide it, he repeated. That's a pleasant way of saying control it. Control is such an ugly word, the man said. Let's say shape. Brienne looked between them, her patience wearing thin. Enough. What does he want? The messenger finally turned to her fully. He wants what he has always wanted, he said. A stable realm. Jaime barked a laugh. By placing a hidden Targaryen on the throne? If that is what stability requires, the man said. Jaime's amusement faded. And what of Daenerys? He asked. The last known Targaryen. The one across the narrow sea with dragons at her back. The man's eyes flickered briefly. A complication, he admitted. Jaime smiled thinly. A rather large one. Silence settled again. The mist shifted, revealing more of the camp beyond. Stark soldiers watching. Uncertain, waiting. Brienne stepped closer to Jaime, her voice low. You can't trust them. Jaime didn't look at her. I don't trust anyone, he said. Then, to the messenger. And what does your master expect of me? The man clasped his hands behind his back. Nothing immediate, he said. Only that you refrain from impulsive revelations. Jaime tilted his head. In other words, keep my mouth shut. For now, the man said. And in return, the man's gaze held his. My master ensures that the boy at the wall remains unharmed. The words struck harder than any blade. Brienne inhaled sharply. Jaime's expression went still. There it was. The truth beneath the politeness. Not an offer. A leash. You're threatening him, Jaime said quietly. I'm protecting him, the man replied. Jaime stepped closer, his voice dropping to something colder. You don't protect people by deciding when they're allowed to live. The man did not flinch. No, he said. But we do protect them by ensuring they are not exposed to dangers. They cannot yet survive. Jaime's jaw tightened. Because the man was right. Jon Snow, revealed too soon, would not live long enough to claim anything. Brienne looked between them, anger rising. This is wrong. Jaime glanced at her. When has that ever stopped anything in this world? She didn't answer. Because she knew the truth of it. The messenger straightened slightly. My master believes you understand the stakes, said Jaime. Jaime let out a slow breath. I do. Then you will consider his request. Jaime met his gaze. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Jaime smiled. Slow. Sharp. Dangerous. I'll consider it, he said. The messenger inclined his head. That is all we ask. He stepped back, signaling to the other riders. They mounted quickly, disappearing into the mist as silently as they had come. Gone. But not truly gone. Varys was watching now. The game had widened. Brienne turned to Jaime immediately. You can't listen to them. Jaime looked out into the mist, where the riders had vanished. No, he said softly. But I can't ignore them either. She stepped closer. They'll use him. Jaime nodded. Yes. And you? Jaime's eyes darkened. I already am. The mist began to lift as the sun climbed higher, burning away the illusion of stillness. The camp came back into focus. The war resumed its shape. But something had changed. The truth was no longer his alone. Others knew. Others moved. And every move from this point forward would bring Jon Snow closer to a fate he had never chosen. Jaime Lannister flexed his hand slowly. The game had always been deadly. But now, it was personal. The message left at nightfall. No banners. No escort. No witness who would remember it clearly by morning. Jaime Lannister stood at the edge of the camp as the rider disappeared into the dark. The soft thunder of hooves swallowed by the distant roll of wind across the riverlands. The sky above was clear now. Stars scattered like shards of broken glass across black velvet. Cold. Sharp. Unforgiving. Much like the truth he had just set into motion. Behind him, the camp murmured, with the low sounds of men settling into uneasy sleep, armor being unfastened, fires reduced to embers, quiet voices exchanging rumors of Lannister movements and southern reinforcements. War, as always, continued. But Jaime had just done something far more dangerous than winning a battle. He had reached beyond it. You sent it. Brienne's voice came from the shadows, steady and certain. Jaime didn't turn. I did. She stepped closer, boots crunching softly against gravel and dead grass. To the wall. Yes. To Jon Snow. Jaime exhaled slowly. If the rider makes it. Brienne folded her arms. You've just done exactly what Varys warned against. Jaime smiled faintly, though she could not see it. Yes, he said. I have a habit of disappointing powerful people. That wasn't clever, Brienne said. It was dangerous. Jaime turned now, meeting her gaze in the dim light of the camp's edge. Everything about this is dangerous, he replied. At least this way. He hears it from someone who isn't trying to use him. Brienne's brow furrowed. And what did you tell him? Jaime's expression shifted, less mocking now, more measured. The truth, he said simply. She held his gaze. All of it. Enough. The wind picked up slightly, tugging at cloaks and stirring the faint smell of dying fires. Brienne stepped closer. You've set something in motion you can't control, she said. Jaime's lips twitched. That's never stopped me before. This isn't a battlefield, Jaime. No, he agreed. It's worse. Silence settled between them. Then Brienne asked the question that lingered beneath everything. Why? Jaime looked past her, toward the north, toward the wall, toward a boy who had never asked for any of this. For once, Jaime said quietly, I wanted the truth to belong to the person it matters to. Brienne studied him. That's not like you. Jaime huffed a quiet laugh. No, he admitted. It isn't. He turned back to her. But then, neither is this. Far to the north, the wall stood as it always had. Ancient, unyielding, a frozen line drawn between the living and whatever lay beyond. The wind howled against it, carrying ice and snow in biting gusts that clawed at exposed skin. Torches flickered along the top, their flames struggling against the cold. Jon Snow stood among the black-cloaked brothers of the Night's Watch, his breath visible in the frigid air. Another raven, Samwell Tarly said, hurrying toward him with a scroll clutched tightly in gloved hands. Jon turned. Sam looked uneasy, more than usual. That makes 3 this week, Jon said. The South must be falling apart faster than we thought. Sam swallowed. This one isn't from the Citadel, or any lord. Jon frowned. Then who? Sam hesitated. It doesn't say. Jon took the scroll. The parchment was plain. No seal. No sigil. That alone was enough to set his instincts on edge. He broke it open. The wind tugged at the edges as he read. At first, his expression didn't change. Then, it did. Subtly. A tightening of the jaw. A flicker in his eyes. Sam watched him closely. What is it? Jon didn't answer immediately. He read the message again. Then again, as if repetition might change the words. It didn't. It's nothing, Jon said finally, folding the parchment. Sam blinked. Nothing. Jon met his friend's gaze. A lie, he said quietly. Sam's confusion deepened. I don't understand. Jon looked out across the endless white beyond the wall. I think, he said slowly, someone is trying to play a very dangerous game. Sam shifted nervously. What does it say? Jon hesitated. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he handed the parchment to Sam. Sam read, and his face went pale. That's, he stammered. That's impossible. Jon's voice was calm. Is it? Sam looked up, eyes wide. You're Ned Stark's son. Jon didn't respond. Sam's voice dropped to a whisper. You are, aren't you? Jon's gaze drifted again to the north, to the cold, to the silence, to the place where nothing lied. My father, Jon said slowly, was the most honorable man I've ever known. Sam nodded quickly. Yes, exactly. Jon's expression hardened slightly. And yet, he continued, this letter claims he lied to the entire realm. Sam shook his head. Why would anyone write this? Jon's voice darkened. Because if it's true, he said, it changes everything. The wind howled louder, as if in answer. Sam looked down at the parchment again, his hands trembling slightly. Rhaegar Targaryen, he whispered. Lioness Stark. He looked back at Jon. That would make you. Jon closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. Nothing, he said firmly. Sam frowned. That's not true. It is here, Jon said, gesturing to the wall. I took the black. I swore an oath. Sam hesitated. But if this is true, it doesn't matter, Jon cut in. His voice was sharper now, more certain. I'm a brother of the Night's Watch. That's all I am. Sam studied him. You don't believe that, he said quietly. Jon didn't answer. Because part of him didn't. Not anymore. The letter burned in his mind. The words. The claim. The possibility. A lie. Or the truth. And if it was the truth, then his entire life had been built on something he never understood. Jon looked down at his gloved hands. At the black he wore. At the identity he had accepted. And for the first time, he questioned it. Back in the South, Jaime Lannister stood beneath a sky slowly paling with the approach of dawn. He didn't know if the message would reach its destination. He didn't know how Jon Snow would react. He didn't know what would come next. But he knew one thing. The truth was no longer buried. It was moving, breathing, spreading. And soon, everyone would feel it. Jaime looked north and whispered, almost to himself, let's see what kind of something that made even the flames recoil. Melisandre staggered back. No, she whispered. The vision shattered. The fire collapsed inward, dimming to embers. Silence filled the chamber. Melisandre's breath came fast now, uneven. This cannot be, she said. But the Lord of Light did not answer. because the truth had already been shown, and it did not care what she believed. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon stood rigid against the wind. The sea crashed violently against the black cliffs below, waves breaking with thunderous force. The salt air bit at the skin, sharp and cold. Davos Seaworth approached carefully, his boots echoing faintly against the stone. "My king." Stannis did not turn. "What is it?" Davos hesitated. "A letter," he said. "From the north." Stannis's jaw tightened slightly. "More reports of Stark movements." "No," Davos said. "Something different." That was enough to draw his attention. Stannis turned, holding out a hand. Davos gave him the parchment. Stannis read. Once. Then again. His expression did not change. But the air around him seemed to grow colder. "This is treason," he said flatly. Davos shifted. "A lie, then?" Stannis's eyes darkened. "No," he said slowly. "That's what troubles me." Davos frowned. "You think it could be true?" Stannis folded the letter carefully. "Eddard Stark was many things," he said. "But he was not a man given to bastards." Davos blinked. "That's not something I expected to hear you say, my king." Stannis's gaze turned distant. "If this is true," he continued, "then the boy at the wall is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen." Davos swallowed. "Which would make him the rightful king," Stannis finished. The words hung between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. Davos studied him carefully. "And what does that make you?" Stannis did not answer immediately. The wind howled louder, as if demanding one. Finally, "A usurper," he said. The word came like iron. Davos exhaled slowly. "And what will you do?" Stannis looked out over the sea, then back toward the north. His jaw set. "What is mine by right? I will not surrender to a ghost." Davos nodded slowly. He had expected no other answer. Across the narrow sea, in the red sands of Qarth, Daenerys Targaryen stood beneath a blazing sun. Her dragons circled overhead, their shadows passing over the gathered crowd below like omens. She had grown stronger, more certain, more dangerous. And yet, she was not alone in her blood. A man knelt before her, trembling. "My queen," he said, a whisper from Westeros. Daenerys tilted her head slightly. "Speak." The man swallowed. "They say, Rhaegar Targaryen's son lives." The world seemed to still. Even the dragons above shifted uneasily. Daenerys's expression did not change, but her eyes hardened. "That is not possible," she said. "They say he lives at the wall," the man continued, "under the name Jon Snow." Silence. Then, a soft laugh. "Cold. Dangerous. My brother died for that throne," Daenerys said. "My family was butchered for it." She stepped closer. "And now they invent ghosts to challenge me?" The man lowered his head. "It may be a lie." Daenerys's gaze lifted to the sky, following the path of her dragons. "Or it may not," she said. Her voice softened slightly. "If he lives." She paused. "Then, he is either my ally," her eyes darkened, "or my enemy." The dragons roared above, as if in agreement. Back in the Riverlands, the truth spread more quietly. Whispers, rumors, fragments of something too dangerous to speak aloud. Jaime Lannister heard them before he saw their effects. A soldier speaking too softly. A glance held too long. A question left unanswered. The camp had changed. Not openly. Not yet. But beneath the surface. Something was shifting. Brienne found him near the edge of the camp once more. "It's spreading," she said. Jaime nodded. "Yes. You didn't just send one letter, did you?" Jaime smiled faintly. "No." Brienne exhaled sharply. "Gods. I wanted the truth to reach more than one set of ears," Jaime said, "in case one of them decides to silence it." She shook her head. "You've just thrown the realm into chaos." Jaime looked out over the camp, over the war, over the fragile balance that had existed only days before. "Yes," he said quietly. "I have." Brienne studied him. "And do you regret it?" Jaime didn't answer immediately, because for the first time since all of this began, he wasn't sure. The truth was out now, moving faster than any army, stronger than any sword, and no one, not kings, not queens, not spiders or lions, could control it anymore. Jaime finally spoke. "No," he said, but there was something in his voice, something uncertain, because the game had changed. And now, everyone was playing. The storm broke not with thunder, but with blood. It began in the dead of night, when the camp was quiet and the fires had burned low. The air was still, heavy with the scent of damp earth and ash. And the only sounds, were the distant calls of night, watchmen, and the restless shifting of horses. Jaime Lannister woke to the sound of steel, not the clash of battle. Something sharper, closer. A wet, choking gasp. His eyes snapped open. Instinct took over. He rolled from his bedroll just as a blade struck, where his throat had been a heartbeat before. The assassin moved silently, dressed in dark leathers that swallowed the light. No sigil, no armor, no hesitation. Professional. Jaime didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't have one. Instead, he moved. Fast. He caught the attacker's wrist mid-strike, twisting sharply. The blade turned, slicing across the man's own forearm. Blood spilled, dark in the low light. The assassin didn't cry out, didn't flinch. His other hand came up, another blade. Jaime cursed under his breath. Of course there's two. The second strike came low. Jaime barely shifted in time, the edge grazing his side as he drove forward, slamming his shoulder into the man's chest. They crashed into the tent's support, wood splintering as both men hit the ground. Outside, voices rose. Too late. The assassin was already moving again. Relentless. Jaime grabbed for anything, his hand closing around a broken piece of wood. Not a sword, but enough. The next strike came. Jaime parried it with the wood, the impact jarring his arm as he twisted, driving the jagged end into the assassin's throat. This time, the man made a sound. A wet, gurgling choke as he collapsed. Silence fell, broken only by Jaime's breathing. Fast, controlled, alive. The tent flap burst open. Brienne, sword drawn, eyes scanning. What happened? She stopped, saw the body. Then Jaime. You're bleeding. Jaime glanced down. The cut along his side was shallow. Barely, he said. Brienne stepped inside, closing the flap behind her. Her expression darkened as she knelt beside the dead man, pulling back the hood. No markings, she said. No insignia. Jaime exhaled slowly. Of course not. Brienne looked up at him. This isn't random. No, Jaime agreed. It's not. He leaned back slightly, wincing as his side protested. Someone decided I know too much. Brienne's grip tightened on her sword. Varys. Jaime shook his head. No, he said. If the spider wanted me dead, I wouldn't have seen it coming. Brienne frowned. Then who? Jaime's gaze darkened. Take your pick. He began counting on his fingers. Cersei, once she hears the whispers. Stannis, if he believes the claim threatens his. Any lord who prefers the war as it is. He paused. Or someone who simply wants to ensure the truth never reaches the wrong ears. Brienne stood. We need to tell Robb. Jaime looked at her. This is exactly why we don't. She stared at him. They tried to kill you. Yes, Jaime said. Which means we're getting close to something dangerous. That's your argument? Brienne snapped. That we keep silent while people try to murder you in your sleep? Jaime met her gaze evenly. My argument is that the moment Robb Stark knows, he becomes part of the problem. Brienne hesitated, and that hesitation was enough. Jaime pushed himself to his feet slowly. Think about it, he said. He's crowned king. His men follow him. If he learns there's another claimant, one with a stronger right, what happens? He does what's right, Brienne said. Jaime almost smiled. And what is that? Brienne didn't answer, because now, she wasn't sure. Jaime stepped closer. Does he bend the knee to Jon Snow? Jaime asked. Does he tell his bannermen everything they've fought for is built on a lie? Brienne's silence stretched. Jaime nodded. Exactly. The camp outside was fully awake now, voices raised. Soldiers gathering, the tension spreading like fire through dry grass. Word of the attack would travel fast. And with it, fear. Brienne sheathed her sword slowly. This changes things, she said. Jaime let out a quiet breath. Yes. It means the truth is already too dangerous to contain. Jaime looked toward the tent entrance, toward the world beyond. No, he said softly. It means it always was. In King's Landing, the reaction was far less restrained. Cersei Lannister stood at the window of the Red Keep, her fingers tightening around the parchment in her hand. The city below moved as it always did, crowded, noisy, oblivious. Fools. All of them. This is a lie, she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Behind her, Tyrion Lannister watched carefully. Perhaps, he said, but it's a convincing one. Cersei turned sharply. You believe this? Tyrion shrugged slightly. I believe that someone wants us to consider it. Cersei's eyes burned. Jon Snow is nothing, she said. A bastard of Winterfell. A nobody. Tyrion tilted his head. And yet, he said, someone went to great lengths to suggest otherwise. Cersei's grip on the parchment tightened. It doesn't matter, she said. Even if it were true. She stopped. Because even she knew that was a lie. It mattered. It mattered more than anything. A Targaryen heir. Alive. Hidden. Her son's claim. Joffrey's crown. All of it. Threatened. Cersei turned fully now, her voice dropping to something colder. Find him, she said. Tyrion's expression didn't change. Jon Snow is at the wall, he said. Not exactly easy to reach. Cersei stepped closer. Then we reach him anyway. Her eyes locked onto his. Quietly. Tyrion studied her for a long moment. Then nodded once. Of course, he said. But there was something in his gaze. Something calculating. Because this truth could destroy more than one crown. Back in the Riverlands, Jaime Lannister stood outside his tent, watching as the sun rose over a camp that no longer felt the same. The attack had changed things. Not just for him. For everything. Brienne joined him, her expression unreadable. They'll come again, she said. Jaime nodded. Yes. And next time? Jaime's lips curved faintly. Next time, he said, I'll be ready. But even as he said it, he knew. This wasn't a fight he could win with skill alone. Because the enemy wasn't a man. Or an army. It was the truth. And now, everyone was trying to kill it. The wall had seen many things. Kings breaking on its stones. Wildlings dying in the snow. Brothers of the Night's Watch. Disappearing into white nothingness beyond the gates. But it had never seen anything like what arrived at dawn. Jon Snow stood at Castle Black's courtyard as the gates groaned open. The wind howled through the archway, carrying with it the bite of the far north. Snow drifted in uneven sheets, soft but constant. Like the sky itself was slowly unmaking the world. A raven had come. Not from the citadel. Not from a lord. From nowhere any man could trace. And inside it, a name. Jon Snow. The courtyard behind him was quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual noise of training swords and shouted commands had faded into uneasy murmurs. Samwell Tarly stood a few paces away, pale-faced, clutching his sleeves like they might anchor him to the ground. You're not going to like this, Sam said again. Jon didn't look at him. I already don't. Sam hesitated. I think you should sit down. Jon finally turned. I'm not sitting down for a letter, he said evenly. Sam swallowed. It's not just a letter. That made Jon pause. Slowly, he reached out. Sam handed it over. The parchment was worn at the edges, as if it had traveled far and been handled too many times. No seal. No mark of authority. Only words. Jon read. The world did not stop. But it felt like it did. For a long moment, he did not move. Did not speak. Did not breathe properly. Sam watched him carefully. Jon. Jon read it again. As if repetition could undo meaning. It didn't. Finally, he lowered the letter. This is a mistake, he said. Sam shook his head quickly. It could be. Yes, but, Jon, listen, it says. I know what it says, Jon cut in. His voice was controlled. Too controlled. Sam faltered. Jon looked out toward the wall of ice rising behind them. The structure that had defined his life. His oath. His identity. I am Ned Stark's son, Jon said quietly. Sam stepped forward. Jon, maybe. No, Jon said sharply. Then softer. I know who my father was. Silence. The wind filled it. Sam hesitated. And your mother? That question landed harder than either of them expected. Jon's jaw tightened. I don't know, he admitted. A beat. Then, I've never known. Sam looked down at the parchment again. It says Lyanna Stark, he said carefully. And Rhaegar Targaryen. Jon's expression hardened. Those are names, he said. Names from stories. Wars. Songs. Sam nodded. Yes, but nothing, Jon said. He looked back at the letter, then crushed it slightly in his hand. I swore an oath, he said. I am the shield that guards the realms of men. Sam's voice softened. If it's true, though, you're not just. I don't care, Jon said. The words came fast, sharper than intended. He paused, then repeated more quietly. I don't care. But Sam was watching him closely. Because Jon did care. He just didn't want to. The wind surged again, rattling the nearby gates. A horn sounded from the wall above. Not an alarm. A signal. Movement. Jon looked up instinctively. A black-cloaked brother was descending the steps quickly. Breath visible. Urgency in every stride. Lord Commander. The man called. Jon stepped forward. What is it? The brother stopped, catching his breath. There's a rider at the gate, he said. From the south. Sam stiffened immediately. Another raven? The man shook his head. No, he said. A living messenger. John frowned. From who? The man hesitated. Then, he says his name is Sir Jaime Lannister. The courtyard went still. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. Sam's eyes widened. The Kingslayer? John didn't move, but something in his expression shifted. A tightening. Not fear. Recognition of consequence. Let him in, John said. Sam turned sharply. John, no, you can't just. I can, John said firmly. His gaze didn't waver. And I will hear what he has to say. Jaime Lannister crossed the frozen yard of Castle Black. Like a man walking into a memory he had not agreed to relive. The cold was different here. Not like the South. Not like battlefields or camps. This cold felt permanent. Like it had no intention of ever leaving. The Night's Watchmen watched him as he entered. Black cloaks. Hollow eyes. Hands resting too comfortably near weapons. He was a stranger. Worse. A Lannister. A Kingslayer. A man with questions following him like shadows. He stopped at the center of the courtyard. And waited. Jon Snow stood at the top of the steps. Still. Silent. Watching him. Jaime studied him in return. So this is him. Not a boy. Not anymore. Something shaped by cold and isolation and duty. But beneath it, something else. Jaime spoke first. You received the letter. Jon's voice carried clearly across the space. I did. A pause. Then Jaime nodded slightly. Good, he said. Sam looked between them, tense and uncertain. Jon descended the steps slowly, stopping a few feet from Jaime. You wrote it? Jon asked. Jaime tilted his head. Part of it. Jon's eyes narrowed slightly. Why? Jaime didn't answer immediately. Because the honest answer was complicated. And Jaime Lannister had never been good at simple honesty. Because, Jaime said finally, ignorance is convenient. Until it isn't. Jon studied him. You're saying I'm not Ned Stark's son. Jaime's gaze didn't flinch. I'm saying, he replied, that Ned Stark carried more truth than your world was ready to understand. Silence. Sam looked like he might collapse from the tension alone. Jon's voice dropped slightly. If this is a lie, he said, I will kill you for it. Jaime almost smiled. There it is, he said softly. The Stark temper. Jon didn't react. Jaime stepped closer. I don't expect you to believe me, he said. I wouldn't. Jon's eyes hardened. Then why are you here? Jaime held his gaze. Because someone has to decide what happens next, he said. Jon's voice was cold. And you think that's you? Jaime exhaled slowly. No, he said. I think it's you. The words landed heavily. Jon didn't respond immediately. Because for the first time since reading the letter, he didn't know what he was supposed to be anymore. The wall groaned faintly behind them, wind pressing against ancient ice. And somewhere far beyond it, the world waited. For a name. For a claim. For a war. Jon Snow looked at Jaime Lannister and asked the only question that mattered. If this is true, his voice tightened slightly. What am I supposed to do with it? Jaime's answer came after a pause. Simple. Uneasy. Honest. I don't know, he said. And that, he added quietly, is why the realm is already afraid. For a long moment, no one spoke. The wind filled the silence instead, rushing along the wall in long, mournful cries that made the ice itself seem alive. Somewhere above them, a raven called out once, then fell quiet, as if even it understood the weight of what had just been said. Jon Snow stood perfectly still, not frozen by cold, but by choice. Jaime Lannister watched him carefully, reading the smallest shifts in expression, the way a man reads a battlefield before the charge. Confusion, anger, denial, and beneath it all, something more dangerous. Curiosity. You're lying, Jon said at last. Not loudly, not emotionally, just certain. Jaime nodded once. That would be easier. Jon's eyes hardened. Easier. For you, Jaime clarified. For me. For everyone. Sam stepped forward slightly, voice trembling. Jon, maybe we should. Jon didn't look away from Jaime. No. Sam stopped. Jon's gaze sharpened. If you came all this way just to tell me a story, Sir Jaime, then you've wasted your time. Jaime's mouth twitched faintly. I've wasted far more time on far worse things, he said. Jon stepped closer. You're saying my entire life is a lie, he said. Based on what? A dream? A rumor? A message no one can verify? Jaime studied him for a beat, then said quietly, No. Jon frowned slightly. Jaime continued. I'm saying I saw the truth before I understood it. That made Jon pause. Sam blinked. You saw it. Jaime nodded slowly. The Tower of Joy, he said. Jon's expression shifted immediately. A flicker. Recognition. He had heard that name before, once or twice, in half-whispered conversations, in fragments from Ned Stark's guarded silence. Jaime noticed. You've heard of it, Jaime said. Jon's jaw tightened. Only stories. Jaime stepped closer, lowering his voice slightly. Then let me correct one, he said. Jon didn't move. Jaime's gaze drifted for a moment, as if seeing something far away. I saw Ned Stark, he said. Not the man you knew. The man he was then. Sam looked uneasy. What did you see? Jaime didn't look at him. I saw him climb a tower in Dorne, he said. I saw blood on the stones. I saw men who should have been legends dying quietly in the dust. Jon's hands curled slightly at his sides. And he asked. Jaime's eyes returned to him. I saw a child, Jaime said. The words cut sharper than steel. Jon's expression tightened. A child, he repeated. Jaime nodded. And Ned Stark took that child. Sam's voice broke slightly. That could be any child. No, Jaime said firmly. This one mattered. Silence again. Thicker this time. Jon's voice dropped. Why are you telling me this? Jaime hesitated. For once, there was no arrogance in him. No smirk. Just something tired. Because I think someone has to stop pretending. The world is simpler than it is, he said. Jon stared at him, then shook his head slightly. You still haven't answered the question, he said. Jaime raised an eyebrow. Which one? What am I supposed to do with it? Jon repeated. The wind surged hard enough to rattle the gates. Jaime didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked up at the wall, at the endless ice, at the line between everything Jon had ever known and everything he might become. That's the problem, Jaime said finally. There is no answer that doesn't break something. Jon's voice sharpened. Try me. Jaime looked back at him, and for a moment, something like respect flickered in his eyes. All right, he said. You can deny it. Jon frowned slightly. Live the rest of your life as Jon Snow, brother of the Night's Watch, son of Eddard Stark. Sam exhaled quietly in relief, as if that option might make everything normal again. Jaime continued. Or you can accept it. Jon didn't move. Jaime's voice lowered. And become something every kingdom in Westeros will either kneel to or try to kill. The words settled like iron in the air. Jon's expression remained controlled, but his eyes betrayed him, because he already understood. This is about power, Jon said quietly. Jaime shook his head once. No, he said. This is about fear. Jon's brow furrowed slightly. Jaime stepped closer again, just enough that his voice would not carry beyond them. Let me ask you something, Jon Snow, he said. If you were born a Targaryen prince, raised in the north, trained as a Stark, and sent to the Wall to disappear, he paused. Would you trust anyone in this realm to let you live once they knew? Silence. Jon didn't answer, because he couldn't. Sam's voice was barely a whisper. They'd kill him. Jaime nodded once. Yes. Jon's jaw tightened. So what you're really saying, he said slowly, is that the truth makes me a target. Jaime didn't deny it. It makes you a symbol, he corrected. And symbols, he added quietly, get burned. A long silence followed. Then Jon turned away, not in defeat, not in acceptance, but in thought. He walked a few steps toward the wall, staring up at it like he could find an answer carved into the ice. Jaime watched him. Sam watched him. Even the guards nearby seemed to hesitate, as if the air itself had changed shape. Finally, Jon spoke. If I am who you say I am. He paused. Why tell me now? Jaime exhaled slowly. Because I didn't trust anyone else to decide what happens when the truth spreads, he said. Jon turned slightly. Jaime continued. And because it already is spreading. Jon's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Jaime's expression darkened. I mean your name is no longer safe in the dark, he said. And the world is starting to move toward it. Jon looked back at him fully now. Then we stop it, he said. Jaime gave a faint, humorless smile. That's the first thing that sounds like Ned Stark in you, he said. Jon ignored that. How? Jon asked. Jaime's answer came after a pause. I don't think you can, he admitted. Jon's eyes sharpened. Then why come here? Jaime looked at him for a long moment, then said, because if you're going to survive what's coming. He paused. You're going to need to decide who you are before they decide for you. The wind roared across the wall again, and somewhere beyond it, far beyond ice and oath and identity, the world began to close in. Jon Snow stood between two truths. One he had lived, one he could not yet accept, and for the first time in his life, the wall did not feel like protection. It felt like a cage,